Welcome to the Stepmom Side with Alicia Crasco, the podcast for stepmoms ready to create the life they want and one they actually have a say in. Here we talk all things stepmom life and just a little bit more. Leave the superficial conversations at the door and get ready for perspective shifts and actionable advice to help you on your way to creating the life you want, one step at a time. Hey, welcome to this week's podcast episode. When you're listening to this, it's going to be December 26th. So you've made it. We're almost to the end of the year. We've got 6 more days until we're officially into 2024. So I just want you to take a deep breath. This podcast episode, I wasn't going to do like an end of the year recap, but here I am. I'm like, you know what? Let's just do something light and not like super heavy like at the end of the year. We'll save those until next year. I just wanted to talk about like this year and how it went. I don't know if you do like New Year's resolutions or New Year's goals or things like that. I don't. Like I do have like different goals like throughout the month or the quarter. But I don't do like, oh, you know what? January 1st, I'm going to start whatever it is or whatever that looks like. I don't do that because I also know myself well enough to know that like every day is a new day, and who I am January 1st is not who I am December 31st, and like there's a lot of change that comes in between those days. So yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, you know what, in January 2024, I'm going to start. No, that's not happening. Although I will say starting in January 2024, let me go ahead and eat my words here. The Stepmom Side community, that is going to get extra content in there. So as of right now, if you don't really know that much about the Stepmom Side community, it's our community. I'm going to start saying our community because I want you to feel like it's yours as well. It's not for me. Honestly, it's not for me. Like I wish that I had it in my early years as a stepmom, but I didn't. And, you know, it is what it is. And there we are. But I want you to have a community that you can go to. And so I want you to know that, yeah, guess what? That is my community. So it's ours. Like I'm in there, you're in there. But here's the thing. So starting next year, every month I'm going to have a mindset moment and I'll poll the community like, hey, what do you guys think that I should have a mindset moment about? And if you're in the community, be on the lookout for an email soon about feedback from the community or like about the community. Like, what do you want to see? What do you not want to see? What can I add to make it better for you? So as of right now, there is a course in there, how to handle step family stressors. So that's a quick win. Go through it. It's got actionable advice that you can use tonight. It is included with the community. If you're an annual member, you get access to Resentment to Relief, a stepmom's guide for letting go. It's a little more in-depth course about resentment and how to let go. This is kind of like super convoluted, right? So just stay with me here. But I'm going to add in mindset moments and I'm going to start doing guest speakers and just kind of like get a flow for like what other content or what other support do you want and or need as a stepmom? Because in my early years, I could shout from the rooftops like what I needed for support as a stepmom. But I also didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know like what kind of support I needed. So I want this to be a place where you can go and get a ton of support that works for you. So I did talk about the quick wins, how to handle step family stressors. It's just like a different perspective on how to handle things. The course that I launched last March was Resentment to Relief, a stepmom's guide to letting go. And here's the tricky thing about resentment is that when you find yourself resentful, you're just pissed off at the world, right? Like you're mad that I signed up for this. You're mad that you didn't know what you didn't know. And here's the crazy thing about resentment. When you get curious about it, like why am I feeling resentful? You find that underneath there are other emotions that are presenting themselves. It could be fear, it could be anger, it could be jealousy, it could be grief, it could be sadness. And you might think, grief, Alicia? That's super weird. Listen, my friend, when you became a stepmom, I don't think I didn't, but I'm pretty sure that you didn't realize what your life would actually look like. Before you became a stepmom, you probably thought, this is what my life is going to look like. I'm going to be super career driven. I'm not going to have any kids. I'm going to live my life. Maybe you thought you would get married. Maybe you thought you wouldn't get married. Maybe you thought you would get married but no kids. Maybe you thought you'd get married with kids. Whatever preconceived notion of like a life that you had prior to your stepmom life is no longer what your life is, right? It's totally different as a stepmom. There's so many stressors, so many different things that are going on that you're like, I didn't sign up for any of this. This is not what I wanted. So there's sadness that comes with that as well. But honestly, you kind of need to grieve what your life before stepmom life looked like. So that's one way. That's like a super specific detail, like, or a super specific example of like how grief turns into resentment. Because then you're mad about like all of these decisions that you've made. Words are hard today. All of these decisions that you've made have led you to the life that you have now, which is not the life that you want to have now, which I totally get because I was there too. If you've been here for a while, you know that I Googled how to get divorced all the time in my first year of marriage. And interestingly enough, my stepson is home right now, and we were talking the other day. I'm super excited. Next week, he's going to be here on the podcast. And we were talking about his military life, and he's like, man, it's so hard. Like, I didn't realize what I was signing up for. Like, I knew it was going to be hard physically, but I didn't realize like how hard physically it was going to be. I didn't realize like the mental challenges I was going to go through, like all of the things. And as he's talking, I was thinking to myself, wow, this is just like being a stepmom. Like, there's so many similarities, right? And so I was talking to him about it, and I was like, Eamon, I don't know if you know this, but the first year Dad and I were married, like, I Googled how to get divorced all the time. And he was like, what? I'm like, listen, I was like, I was struggling so much. I hated it. And he was like, well, I had no idea. I'm like, means I'm a good pretender, but also, like, can you be honest with me? I know that you knew. Like, I was not really that kind. So we kind of talked about that. And so it was kind of like a bonding moment over, like, what he's going through and, like, what I went through. And so it's just interesting to like hear different things or like those connections that can be made, even if it's not necessarily like stepmom related. Like, that's one way that you can bond with your kid. Like, yeah, I know your stepkid. Like, I know exactly what you're going through. Or, you know, I felt the same way. Maybe you don't know exactly what they're going through. But like, I have felt the same way in this situation that I went through. But yeah, working through my resentment and figuring out why I was being triggered or like what emotions were coming up, like really, really helped me. So back to like 2023 and like how it went. This year, I've coached more stepmoms than I've ever coached before, which I'm like super excited about. Like, that's my favorite thing, is getting to know you and like learning your story and help you go from Googling how to get divorced like I did to like now you're like, okay, I've got a good relationship with the kids. Deep breath. Everything is going really, really well. So yeah, coaching, like, I just love it. I love seeing people grow. I love personal development, and like, I love being able to be there and like help you and like cheer you on and like do your thing. So if you've ever been interested in coaching, now would be a good time to start, because like I said, 2024 is like right around the corner. And honestly, for you, I want you to have a life that you don't feel like you have to run away from. I hear stepmoms say, I feel like I just need a drink or 2 drinks or 3 drinks maybe to get through the night. Listen, I have been there too, my friends. Like, I wanted to run. Obviously, I was Googling how to get divorced. But I want you to be able to like get to the point where you're not so stressed out about being a stepmom that it's not like living rent-free 24/7 in your head. And when you're like, oh, okay, well, my situation, and here's what I hear from stepmoms, my situation really isn't that bad. Like, I don't know if I need coaching. I hear you. I get it. I totally get it. And honestly, like, asking for help is like really freaking hard. But some of the like simpler things that I've helped stepmoms go through or like navigating liking one kid and not liking the other kid, working on like the lack of control that they feel, building their confidence, that's a big thing. Working on like the parenting styles and how they're different from their partners and how to navigate that. Expectations, that's another huge thing that I've worked with stepmoms on, because if you come in thinking that you've got these crazy high expectations and then they're never met, obviously you're going to be set up for failure. Like, you're definitely not set up for success. So yeah, if you've ever been interested in coaching, like I would definitely say like now is your time. 2023, we celebrated 8 years of marriage, which I'm like, oh yes, we're staring down the barrel at like 9 years of marriage, which I'm like super excited about. Like it's gotten better every year. Again, it requires work. They don't call marriage institution for a reason. So yeah, I'm like, yeah, we made it to 8 years. We're almost at 9 years. Yay. Let's see, I launched the podcast, which this is freaking amazing. Obviously, I launched a podcast. You're sitting here listening to it, right? And something that's not well known is that, actually, I don't think I've ever talked about this publicly, but my stepson is the one that got me a podcast microphone last year for Christmas. So when I opened it, people were like, a microphone? Like, what's that for? But I had talked to him about it. So obviously he knows that I coach stepmoms. He knows that I've got a course. He knows that I do podcasting. Like he knows all the things. And I've talked about this before, but he's one of, if not the biggest hype man I've got like in my corner. He's always like, hey, what's going on? Who do you have coming on? What's going on? Like, how are the courses? How's coaching? Blah, blah, blah. All the things. But at that time, he said, oh, are you going to do a podcast? That would be cool. Like, could I be on it at some point? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like, that might be weird. Like, I don't know. And then I was like, I'm thinking about doing a podcast at some point. At that point, I like innately, like I knew I'm going to do a podcast, but I wasn't really like ready to put that out into the universe. So I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm going to do a podcast at some point. And here we are, right? Like I launched it right before we went to see him in August. But yeah, he is the one that got me the podcast microphone, and I love podcasting. Like it's super, super great. Like it's easy like to talk to you about whatever it is that's going on or helping you navigate through like different stressors. That's why I'm like, hey, listen, my friend, like if you've got a podcast topic that you want me to speak on, or if you've got something that you're going through, please, for the love of God, please send me a message on Instagram or send me an email, alicia@aliciacrasco.com, and put in the subject like podcast topic, or just send me a message on Instagram. Here's a podcast idea that I have or a podcast topic that I would like you to speak on. I am happy to do that for you. Like this podcast is a labor of love. Like completely free resource. And it's kind of like you get coaching from me, like whether you're on your commute, whether you're washing dishes, cleaning the house, out for a walk, driving around, running errands, whatever it is. It's kind of like having a coach in your pocket. So I want the podcast to be beneficial for you. And I find that the solo episodes like this, like are typically more beneficial for people. Like I get a lot of DMs like, hey, that was really great. Like this really spoke to this, or it really helped me through that. So keep me posted on what you want to hear about. It was my first full year without my stepkids in the house, which is interesting, right? I think that sometimes, stepmoms get caught up in this idea of, I can't wait until it's just my partner and I, or my partner, our kids, and I. Totally relatable. Like, I couldn't wait for that either. But then now that it is, I can't even believe I'm about to tell you this. Sometimes I actually miss having the kids in the house. Sometimes, not all the time. Don't think it's more than it's not, because it's not. But there are times that I'm like, oh yeah. I mean, especially my stepson, because he was here full time for quite a while. I'm like, oh, I do miss like that connection or just being able to talk to him whenever. But then now, mind you, he's here. And so I'm like, when is he leaving? Like, I have things that I need to do, but I also feel this pull to like spend time with him because he's here. And I include him in like whatever it is that we're doing. Hey, we're going to make different Christmas treats or desserts or whatever. Do you want to come and hang out and do those with us? I give him the autonomy to like say yes or no. Just yesterday, my stepdaughter was here and she hung out with us a lot longer than I thought she was going to. So I was like, hey, do you want to go with me and get my daughter from school? And she was like, sure. Do you want to eat with us? Because she was still here. And she was like, yeah, sure. And then she ended up leaving because she had to work today and all of that. But you realize that when they're out of the house that there are certain things that feel like a massive issue right now that in 5 months or maybe 5 years really aren't going to matter. So if you still have your stepkids in the house, building a connection sometimes seems like the hardest thing to do, especially if you're a part-time stepmom. I'm going to be doing a podcast on this soon, so stay tuned. But it is just really hard because you can't wait for that day. And then like sometimes that day comes and it might take you like a year, a couple years. And then you're like, oh, you know what? Actually, I kind of miss them in the house because you kind of gloss over like all of the things that went bad or like things that you didn't do so well. or places like where you made mistakes. And there's a lot of growth to be said, or to speak to, right? Another really good thing that I'm like super pumped about is that I feel like, actually, I don't feel, I know that my relationship with both kids is really good. And I can say that, like, at the end of 2023, this might change next year, but at the end of 2023, my relationship with both kids is good. Like, I can hang out with them and not be like, oh my gosh, like, what is possibly going to go wrong today? Like, what is going to be said that's going to be repeated back? What is going to be held against me? What is going to be twisted out of context? Like, all of the things, right? Again, it takes a lot to get there. So let me just tell you this. If you've got teenage stepkids, this is not supposed to be on like the 2023 recap, but here we go. A lot of the things that I'm talking about on this are not going to be, or not supposed to be on here. So if you're multitasking, please come back to me. If you have stepkids in the house right now and it is hard, just know that I see you. Just know that in 3 short but very long years, these kids are going to be out of the house. 4 short but very long years, 5, however many years you have left for these kids in the house. It's going to be difficult. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And part of the problem with being a stepmom is so many times you have to be the bigger person, and it is so damn frustrating. So I see you. But soon they will be out of the house. And you're like, Alicia, but I'm in it right now. The trenches are deep and it's dark and I don't want to be down here. I know. I get it. I see you. I'm going to tell you right now, like, that would be a good time for you to get coaching. If you feel like you're bashing your head against the wall and like not getting any results, now would be a good time for you to get coaching. But soon these kids will be out of the house. And I just want to tell you, they will grow up. They will become their own person. But sometimes it takes them being out of the house to see their own faults, to become more self-aware. So if you're in it right now and it sucks and you're having a hard time, lower your expectations on what you expect from them, especially if your parenting style is completely different than your partner's. And secondly, like, it just takes time. And it seems like so long. But yeah, it will get better. Better meaning maybe it's just them being out of the house and then you no longer have to see them. Maybe that's what better is for you and your situation. And you know what? That's okay. Don't let anyone guilt you into feeling like, oh, you need to have this perfect relationship with your stepkids in order to be an awesome stepmom. No, you don't. And I also don't want you looking at my relationship and being like, damn, Alicia's got a good relationship with her stepkids. You know, I could never have that, or I really want to have that. If you really want to have that, that's awesome. That's amazing. Like, I love that for you. Just know that it takes growth on everyone's part. You can do all of the things, and maybe the stepkids don't want to have a relationship with you. Maybe they're still caught in loyalty binds. Maybe there's still some parental alienation going on. It's okay for you to have the relationship that you have now. Like, I'm going to give you that permission. I want you to start 2024 off on, okay, I can just be. I don't have to like force myself into being something that I'm not going to be. Listen, my friend, I was not expecting this podcast to be like a coaching call for you. I'm really sorry. I don't know. I can't take my coaching hat off sometimes, I guess. Maybe it's just like a lot of rambling. But yeah, overall, I would say 2023 was a really good year. I learned a lot. Our relationships changed. Everyone's kind of grown into their role. And okay, so we've been married almost 9 years. And maybe now is the only time that I feel like we've ever like truly operated as like a familial unit because of everything else that had been going on. Or, you know, like, you just can't get out of it when you're like in it, right? Like, it's not like you have like your own house to escape to, but if you did, that would be nice. That's a different podcast for a different day. But yeah, so just know that even me, like, as a stepmom coach, and I've got a good relationship now with my stepkids, it still took 9 years of marriage. That doesn't include like the 12 years that we've been together to feel like we are operating as like a family unit. So please give yourself the grace. And here's the question that I want to leave you with before we start 2024. if your friend was coming to you with the struggles that you have right now, what would you say to them? If I was coming to you and saying, hey, I'm really struggling with, insert whatever it is that you're struggling with, what would you say to them? And then write that advice down. And then when you have your stress or that struggle rear its ugly head for you, I want you to take out that piece of paper, take out that Post-it note, and I want you to read that and use it for yourself. That is the end of this podcast, because otherwise I'm just going to keep rambling and you have other things to do. You can get on with your day, right? But yeah, I will chat with you in the next episode. I hope that you have a great New Year's Eve. Thanks for taking time to listen to this week's episode. If anything was helpful or resonated with you, please share it on social media and tag me. I'm just at Alicia Crosco. And if you could leave a 5-star rating and review while you're at it, that would also be really helpful. And if you find yourself struggling with your stepmom journey and you want a little bit more support without the hefty price tag of coaching, you might want to check out the Stepmom Side community, which is my own private community for stepmoms, where you get to connect with other stepmoms around the world and myself, where I hold weekly office hours and monthly group coaching. It's kind of like you have your own personal coach in your own back pocket. Again, without that hefty price tag. See you next week.